Good evening. Welcome to the first meeting of our Lawrence Bikes Plan Update Steering Committee. We're happy to have you this evening. We have obviously prepared an agenda for you. Hopefully there's some content you've had a chance to look at as we work through this conversation, but we'd like to first, because we see lots of new faces in the room, and so you have a chance to meet each other and understand who you represent, take an opportunity to do some introductions. If you could share your name and who you represent and tell us your favorite place to bike. We thought that would be a good way to kind of break the ice. My name is Jessica Morringer. I'm the Transportation Planning Manager for the Lawrence Douglas County Metropolitan Planning Organization. And one of the staff members for the committee or for this work group. And I really love to bike. My favorite part is probably the part of the loop that's the Burroughs Creek Trail, because I feel like there's lots of good access points that I really love to get off and do things with my kiddo. So.
My name is Stephen Mason. I'm a transportation planner with the MPO as well. And I do love the loop, especially out by K10 and the wetlands there. But I think I've got to go with the river trails. Love getting out there and just riding a little bit of the single track. So it's always pleasant. Hopefully I can do that again soon. We'll see what the weather does.
I'm Phil Collison, and I guess my favorite spot on the loop is the section past the sports complex out to the dam. Just because I always look out at that little ridge, and I finally went over there and walked on that ridge. Like riding through that valley.
I'm Jared Gobb. I'm representing FLAT, the Friends of Lawrence Area Trails, on this committee. And my favorite place to ride my bike is anywhere I can ride my bike. My favorite section of the loop is Birchen Park along the river. It's not exactly on my way to go home, but I will opt to do it just because I like it.
I'm Catherine Schartz, and I'm representing the Lawrence Bicycle Club. And yeah, I'm the same way. Anywhere I can ride my bike is my favorite place. But I think my favorite part of the loop is just that whole section. I live up by 6th and George Williams, and I go from there all the way around to the wetlands. To the Burroughs Trail. I like that. And I used to have a QM on that, but somebody took it fast, like Hannah.
I didn't say I represent Lawrence Association of Neighborhoods.
Hi, my name is Shayla Jones, and I'm a member of the Haskell Student Government Association, specifically freshman rep. And I think my favorite place to bike is surprisingly along Wakarusa, because it's all hills and I get to feel the wind in my face, and it's really nice. So.
Hey everybody, that's Jackie. I'm Val Bontrager with the Lawrence Mountain Bike Club. I'm the current president this year. I guess we're saying where we like to bike. My favorite place is the river trail. Second favorite is Clinton Lake, but love the river trail. Yeah.
Captain Jameson. I work in public health, so my year's experience with Live All Douglas County has put me to work closely with Lawrence Douglas County Public Health, which I guess is who I'm representing. My favorite place to bike, I do the loop most often, and I'm on the southwest side of town by the dam Arboretum area.
I'm Adia Witherspoon, and I'm a planner with the MPO. And I moved here 6 months ago, so I've not biked here yet. So my favorite is to be determined. Taking suggestions.
I think we'll jump online next. Let's see, we've got Pat.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Pat Collette. I'm also a representative from the Lawrence Bike Club. And my favorite places to bike are, well, I lead a Monday night group that goes from basically downtown out the Burroughs Trail out to the Haskell Trail, and then turns around and comes back as a loop. And also I live west a little bit, so I like taking the trail out to Clinton Lake and then to Lone Star Lake. That's one of my favorite destinations.
And it looks like we have Jenny online as well.
I'm just coming in. Give me a minute. I'll be inside, but maybe you can
Oh,
call.
okay.
Okay, I think, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, it's kind of a weird way to unmute. Jenny Kramer, I am an East Lawrence resident. And yeah, I mean, I ride a lot just for transportation to Dillon's, love the Burroughs Trail. And then there's that section just south of Osdall, where you can go to like Menards area. It's really pretty, that park that's recently been done.
And then we have Jenny in the room with us.
Hi, sorry, I'm a little late.
That's fine.
I'm Jenny Tricano Muller. I'm here representing the Connected Cities. I think it's we're at the city of Lawrence. I like to, Sam sometimes does this too, but we lead a bike bus of kids on Fridays down from Barker Bakery to Limestone School. It's just a really fun, joyful ride. Maybe that's my favorite place.
Excellent. And Sam.
Sure, my name is Samuel Carter. I'm with the Lawrence Coalition for Safe Streets, and my favorite place to ride, probably the 21st Street Bikeway. I ride it almost every day. I love it. And ironically, I think last week my favorite place to ride was 19th Street because the city just cleared all the grit off the side, so I actually could ride in the bike lane there as opposed to taking the road and wondering if motorists were wondering what I was doing. And you know, so felt really good. Great relief to have that cleared. That was a joyful experience. So.
Online.
Oh, Angel, excellent. Angel, we're just going around and introducing ourselves with your name, organization, and place that you like to ride your bike.
Asi Hung Tadish, Ashita Shitzak, Angel Autumn Alazares. Oh my gosh, I said my name. I said that wrong. Sorry, I'm still getting used to introducing myself in my language. But anyways, what I said was, how are you all? Today is a good day. My name is Angel Autumn Alazares. I'm here to represent Haskell Indian Nations University as the Student Government Association president. So where I've normally ridden a bike at is like the park that's really near Haskell. I can't think of the name of the park, but that's where I've normally ridden a bike at. But I have noticed other students ride their bikes around campus as well. And it's normally kind of on the outskirts of campus, like when you first get here and like, you know, around those parts.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
All right, so we just have some stuff we're gonna walk through tonight for our kind of first meeting to kick this off, and we're gonna go ahead to the next slide. We're gonna talk about, this is all of you. So our goal in creating this committee with our MPO policy board was to make sure that we have a diverse representation of voices and perspectives as we embark on this journey to update the plan. We will also be working, and we'll talk a little bit later about how we're going to engage with the community and the conversations we're going to have in that space. But we're hoping to have your voices and perspectives in this to bring different perspectives to this process and also review the content and materials and best practices and the results of what the community has told us as we move forward to write a plan for the future of bicycling and bicycle culture in our community. So we just kind of have some common ground rules that we would expect people to follow, to respect and listen to each other. Your role really is to provide guidance and direction to staff. Generally, we operate these steering committees through general consensus. So we're trying to find as much information as we can and make a good decision to move things forward. Does that mean you may buy in 100% to everything we're going to do? No, but hopefully you at least understand that the issues for all the issues were heard and we're going to find some consensus we can move forward together as a group as we do this work. And do that in a thoughtful and meaningful way. And so we are open to feedback and guidance. I have many years of experience. I mean, 15 years of doing transportation planning in our community. And so I have a lot of intimate knowledge of the things that we've done previously. That doesn't mean that I'm tied to that. Like, we can grow and learn from the things we've done and look to other places for best practices. So please don't feel like we're going to take it personal. We're going to have this conversation with you and hopefully work to identify things we can to make action steps and recommendations for implementation. And so that leaves you to that thing of like, ask questions. We want to have discussion. And if you have questions outside of the time between meetings, please feel free to reach out to Stephen or I. We will make sure that you get the answers that you need to whatever, or if we can answer it, or if we can't answer it, to let you know that and be really transparent about the work that we're doing in this process. So I like to start a little bit of the conversation with what we expect. Does that seem reasonable to anyone? Is there anything else anyone would like to ask or add about that, of things they would expect from each other or from us as we go through this process? Bring it up later if there is, that's fine. We'll have a conversation. Our intent is to work in a good space together to be able to do this work. So we prepared for you a document that we attached on the agenda. We gave you the existing plan, but then we also kind of prepared what we thought are our first notes as we start to think about this work that we're doing and the context of where we're doing the work, right? So what do the other plans and planning documents say? And I'm not going to go in great detail. We provided that documentation to you, and it's, I think, good context for you to review it. I'm just going to highlight a few things that I think are things that we would just pay attention to and that are know as part of the bigger context. The state of Kansas adopted, since we did our last plan, an active transportation plan for the entire state. And I think it has a lot of good efforts in it that are going to be statewide recommendations and considerations that we can, as staff or as community members, play a part in. Please come in and join us. To play a part in as the larger state works on improving multimodal transportation. And so there are things in there that might interest you. You can obviously, we've linked to those documents in our memo. You can dive into those in more detail if you want to understand what's happening at a state level around bicycle investments or bicycle planning policy and work. And the state has a lot of going ons that are working to also improve bicycling across the state. Locally, we have the Adapt Douglas County, our climate action and adaptation plan, which has strong ties to mobility and vehicle miles traveled reductions for energy reasons, and relates a lot back to supportive policy, I think, for the call to action for the work that we're doing. And then we've included just some other contextual planning around the land development code and our city strategic plan, which has an outcome area around connected city, which has initiatives around multimodal transportation. So there's a lot more detail and information in there. I don't know that we have to go into it in great detail, but I would encourage you, if you're interested in any of those things, to kind of understand the perspective and the context that we're coming from. That all of these are we have detailed in more deep summary and links to all of these different plans, kind of for the context of the work that we're doing in our status of bicycling document. So I just kind of lay that out as context for with what this bike plan fits into for the work. So next slide. Then we also, in that document, and it looks something like this, if you pulled it up and opened it, it's a table. We took all of the recommendations that had previously been written out of the existing bikeway plan and tried to give you some sort of status update about what has happened since the last plan. Many of you, if you bike, you may follow a project or know that some infrastructure has been constructed that you use every day. You may not be aware that, unless you participated on the committee, that we did a wayfinding developed a wayfinding strategy, which unfortunately didn't get funded for implementation, but we have a wayfinding strategy sitting on the shelf. It maybe you have or aren't aware of, which impacts, all road users in our neighborhood traffic management program and the work that's happening there around residential and neighborhood streets. We also are working on the last phases of our draft of the Vision Zero Transportation Safety Action Plan to reduce serious injuries and fatalities on our roadways. And so some of that work will relate to vulnerable road users and recommendations in that plan that'll probably tie in and relate to what we're here. But we laid those out for you mainly so we can all be in contextually a similar page of understanding where we've been, where we thought we were going with the last plan and where we've been in terms of that context. But that's all there for you. We'd be happy to entertain any questions if you had anything about something you read. But mainly that's there. We will continue to build on that, I think, as we draft the work that we're doing in this plan. To kind of see where we're at on some of these recommendations. Okay, next slide. Here's when we do all of these planning processes, we start at the beginning thinking about how we're going to do this work and lay out what we intend to do in this space and how we kind of plan to do that work. So at this point in time, this is our timeline. It could change. Something could happen. We could get shifted and have to feel like we need to do more work or something. But in general, we anticipate having about 5 meetings with the steering committee. Maybe we get a focus groups and we decide we need to do some topic specific stuff or other context things. And we will adapt to that as we come to those issues. But we're really in this thoughtful process trying to think about, okay, as we go through this, here's the work we intend to do. We're going to talk a little more later about the engagement we plan to do throughout the planning process. And then as we get to the end, we can share more details about how that will evolve. And right now, we're planning to go into phase 1 of that. We anticipate there will be probably 2 phases of that kind of as we do this work. Next slide. And now's the fun part where we're hoping to hear from you at this point. We lay out as staff on this project, and we also work in this space as planners, working with our city engineers and other city departments and that are responsible for implementing a lot of parts of the plan, different parts of the plan. And so we are familiar with the previous Multimodal Transportation Commission, and we listen to the Connected City conversations to understand where some of the struggling points are, or points that we think are where additional planning work needs to be done to continue to evolve and adapt to where we're at now. And go to the next slide. So in the document we gave you, we kind of laid out in our scoping document where we work with our policy board to create this committee. We have an idea about expected work tasks, what we think the work we really need to do in this plan. And it really comes down to what we came up with were these 7 bullets. And we'll kind of talk through each one, but I want to hear from you as you think about these. Which ones do you think are the biggest priority, and or if we're missing something on this list that you think the plan needs to address? So first off, we have on the list the review of the network with particular attention to sections of the Lawrence Loop that are incomplete and determining alignments for those. But the review of the entire network would look at are we missing other connections? Is there something that we need to do differently in terms of that? Review of the priority and secondary funding networks. So the way that the bikeway system is implemented with the standalone funding relies on those where we prioritize our funding investment for the standalone projects in those priority networks. So we want to say, are those still the networks that we believe where the funding should be going, or our standalone funding should be going? We've heard the need to investigate bicycle parking at city-owned facilities and a plan to retrofit facilities that don't meet current development code. Normally that would happen when a building is rebuilt or when it has a significant site planning process. But in lieu of that, there are still probably small wins that we could get before those things happen and not wait for those things as triggers to be able to think about bike parking and amenities at city-owned properties. In national best practices and around town, you've probably seen a lot of what we call what we found are called bike plus, which is scooters. In some places it's longboards, some places it's electric bikes of varying degrees. Some of those are shared micromobility in terms of is there a shared scooter system or other things. Some are skateboards, and all of those different types of modes have different regulations. And one of the things that I know was previous work of Multimodal Transportation Commission and never got picked up post-COVID was really this consideration about where are all of these things legal and how do we deal with the interaction and where they're, based on where they're legal between all of the user types that we have using our infrastructure. So exploring what best practices are telling us about how we need to govern all of these users in the shared space, often typically in this space, in the sidewalk environment or in bike infrastructure. We want to go back to in our existing plan, we have what we heard from is a level of comfort expectations, thinking about low stress bikeways, and reconfirm with the community that the way that we're thinking about those is still consistent with the community's expectations for comfortable bikeways. And that may mean translate changes to our level of comfort assessment or model of how we decide what facilities are appropriate for which places. We have made an invitation to the University of Kansas to be included in our process and consider, because they have a bikeway plan that needs updating, and we're still having they have a member appointed to the steering committee, and we are in conversation with them about what it means in terms of coordinated planning, right? The bikeways campuses in the, particularly KU, in the middle of the community, and like Haskell, that they have an actual bike plan and doesn't need to be updated, or how would we integrate it if we're not going to update it with their master plan. And then coordination just with other city plans and policies. So these are, yes.
I'm sorry, I came in late. I went to the wrong fire station.
Oh, no.
Yeah, on the east side.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, and so I'm not, understanding the totality of what we're doing here. But when I see those work tasks and I see the steering committee, it may be useful for each of us to rank those in terms of priority, and then someone put that list together so we can see what the steering committee really feels is, where they feel it is important, which our attention.
Sure. And I think in that exercise, my vision was just, we can go through these again, 1 through 7, and you raise your hand for your top 3. You know what I mean? At least they'll give us some indication. And we can do that if that helps everybody, or if we want to add anything if people think there's something missing from that at this point, I want to make sure that gets added too, so people could also consider whether or not that as a priority in the larger list of things. I don't think this is the end all be all. If we come upon something that we also need to explore, I think we can embark on that journey, but we just have to be thoughtful about the fact that this will be the priority for what we're trying to accomplish, or what we feel like is the work that it continues to move the needle forward.
Where do you see kids in schools represented either in the bike plan overall or in these work tasks?
So in a couple places. So schools traditionally have engaged with us, and we have a separate planning process for safe routes to school. And that will actually be part of our work plan for starting in the fall to update the safe routes to school plans. With that being said, much of the planning work that has happened around schools has been around pedestrian environment, mainly because our plans for safe routes to school have been elementary and middle school, and up to the point of really in the last, probably I would say even 5 years, a lot of that has been the assumption that for the most part, kids are going to be riding on the sidewalk to get to school. And that was an assumption I think the previous work group made around safe routes to school. And so the environment around crossings and sidewalks has been one of bike and ped, or particularly for school kids. Of course, as we build out a network that's more comfortable for all users, I don't think that has to be the only part of that conversation. It's just been where the dialogue has been so far. But I think that confirming the level of comfort expectations and looking at that bikeway network, those two pieces are where do we have plans to build a bikeway network in the places where we would need to connect kids to schools? 1, and then 2, when we build those infrastructures, are they designed at the level of comfort that meets family needs, like all ages and abilities? And I'd say those are the 2 tasks that probably tie most closely with how we would consider kids in the elements of how we're thinking about this planning work.
Thanks. Yeah, I think if you have a lever to convert more people to cycling, it's.
Yeah. So I think, so as we think about those priority and secondary networks, there could be opportunities like where we're funding stuff that we could look at overlays between how does that relate to the networks we've chosen for safe routes to school route development on sidewalks? And is there like is there either overlap where we could would want to prioritize projects or parts of the bikeway because it also provides the school connection? Or is there places where we're missing network, but we should be thinking about it because it has value in this other space? So yeah, I think those are good connections that we'll need to make or think about. Don't mind me, you can, if somebody has something else you can talk, I would just take some notes for.
We plan to speak to the BIE about Haskell being able to get sidewalks and stuff. The Bureau of Indian Education.
Sure. So I don't have a lot of experience in that space working on Haskell property in terms of how that plan, how they do any of their planning or connectivity work. But my thought would be that we can embark on that conversation with you to find out from facilities how they do that planning. And if there's any consideration or conversation about where those connections are made or how we get back to the city network. It's our higher level coordination experience with the University of Kansas, I think can be a good model for that in terms of if they already have planning, then there's opportunities for us to draw stuff together. But if they don't, then I think it's looking at where maybe those things maybe need to be made and what role they have in playing a part in having that conversation internally. Because if the Bureau of Indian Education is doing like their campus planning, I don't know how all of that works, if that's happening locally or if that's happening at what level.
It's happening at a federal level.
Yeah,
So
if it's
like,
happening
we
at a-
operate at a federal level.
Right.
So you would have to speak to basically the BIE. Yes.
And if we're interested in that, we can reach out and have those conversations. We'll be limited in the sense of what type of response we get.
Hello, yeah, Haskell, we are more in touch with our facilities manager right now. Currently what Haskell is looking at is our roads, just because we do have some potholes on campus. So we're trying to like look where bikes can go, where cars can go. Students can walk, different things along those pathways just to make sure that it's easier for students.
I think we're having a little bit of connection issue. I think we got most of that, but I'll follow up after the meeting as well to make sure that we get that covered.
Sorry about that. Our bandwidth sometimes cuts in and out inside of the office space that I'm in right now.
That's all right.
But yeah, over the past 2 semesters, I believe, they've had contracts going in place to look at fixing Haskell's roads and making sure that students are able to navigate the campus fairly easily, whether they're using bikes, cars, or walking.
But we'll reach out and see if there's any formal planning or documentation that we can reference or look at when we're thinking about connections.
Yeah, and they
Okay.
might know the contact at Haskell where you could ask questions of.
Yeah.
How do you get but how do you make suggestions and such, so.
Jessica and Stephen, I have a question about, I know this is the Lawrence Bike Plan, but is there any component of that addresses kind of the interaction between the city limits and the county in this plan, or is that done separately in the county plan?
Yes and no.
Okay.
So both. They're in this plan. on the network map, there's considerations for laying out some expectations about connectivity for areas, probably what I would describe as within the growth tiers for Plan 2040, of where we expect to grow. There's some network laid out. That's really generic. It doesn't follow road alignments. It's through farmland, it's through non-developed land at this point. And I think at some level, there would be that expectation that that would stay. And we could also edit if there's other places we need to think about connectivity as annexation and development happens, that the bike plan is the plan to look to determine where connections are made when development happens.
Okay, great.
Secondly, there is also a countywide bikeway plan, and we are gonna be having conversations with the other cities and the unincorporated part of the county to determine the need and the scope of work if there's need to update that plan as well. There has been, outside of Baldwin City and Eudora, there has been a lot less implementation in county in the unincorporated areas and even in those other cities than Lawrence is implementing stuff at a faster pace. And so we're gonna just evaluate that based on workload and make a determination about what level of update that plan may also see in the next year or two.
Okay, well, can you remind me of the date on the countywide plan? I've forgotten what that is.
I don't know that off the top of my head.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
no, that's fine. That's fine. I can look it up. Thank you.
Time kind of all works together. It looks like we approved that in 2021, but I would say, Pat, that plan was also the majority of the work that was done in the last time we did this, we did Lawrence bike plan and countywide bike plan together.
Okay.
And so I would say, COVID happened in there, and I think we just got sidetracked for a while on some of the work, and it didn't get adopted till later, but most of the work I believe we did for like engagement and all the stuff happened at the same time as the Lawrence bike plan.
Okay, yeah. Thanks.
Thoughts about, at this point, you ready to raise your hand and indicate which tasks? If we start at the beginning of the list and do just a simple count, you can raise your hand for 3. Tell me your top 3, and we'll just start at the beginning. And is everybody prepared to think about doing that so we can kind of just get a straw poll? Okay, yeah, you're fine. Yep, please.
I have a general housekeeping question. Sorry, my name's Ben. What's the general public's role in a meeting like this?
So we invite you to attend and observe the meeting. We accept written public comment. And there's instructions of how to do that on the agenda, and we'll share it with the committee. As far as coordinating, we will have a public engagement process that engages with the general public. And that's the way that we plan to engage with everyone to share the information at large with the steering committee.
I think they're all kind of important. We might spend more time on some than others, but I wouldn't want to neglect one of them.
I mean, I think as far as we're concerned, we are committed in our scope of work to do these. So if there's a general consensus, you feel that way about it, I don't disagree. We are gonna have to spend varying amounts of time on different elements of these, and some of them we'll get into more or less. If there's something, I'm happy to still do a poll if people wanna say which ones, if you think there's particularly of importance. Okay, sure. Let's do that then, Phil. Do you think you can either choose some or you can choose not to choose some? Regardless, I will say I don't think we're gonna not do any of these unless, like, you would decide not to participate, and we'll add Haskell to that conversation also. We'll explore those options. We may hit dead ends, and we'll come back and let you know that if that's the case. Okay. Top 1, review of the planned bikeway network. And I just asked, you can raise your hand for 3, so raise your hand if you think that's priority in our work. 7. Review of the priority and secondary funding networks.
We have 3 choices.
Yes.
Letting you know my hand is raised. My video is just active. Okay.
Thank you. You can use the emoji
Yeah.
too.
Identify bicycle parking needs for city-owned properties.
I think it needs to be done.
Yeah, and we're not gonna not do any of
Yeah,
these things,
okay.
just because you don't say they're the priority. It just gives us an idea about the things you're gonna be most interested in talking about here. Consider the needs of emerging forms of mobility such as pedal bike plus.
Need to learn more of what that means.
And we got work to do there too.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Confirm level of comfort expectations for low stress bikeways with the community and best practices.
I get both my books here.
Invitation to KU and Haskell to think about bikeway planning and updates to their plans. And I think coordination with other city plans and policies is probably a given, and I think that's probably anybody got votes for that?
Oh, I voted for that.
What was that?
I voted for that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I kind of thought that those two went with one another, like with the plans and policy, like the last 2 bullet points. So because SGA, we do have some bike plans somewhere within our documents. We're currently looking for them to see what we originally have in place and what updates need to be.
BIA.
And we also have to talk with our facilities and authority to be able to make sure that our plans align with our network.
So I think by the time you raise up your hands, you can hopefully tell very clearly that there are 3 really at the top. 4 at the top, they're all pretty tied, actually. 9, 8, 7, 7. So 9 was review the existing planned bikeway network. 8 was confirm the level of comfort expectations, and then both with 7 is priority and secondary network and the bikes plus conversation. So. And I would say probably those are some of the bigger tasks that we anticipate will take some of our work in that rolling conversation.
You know, I think that I know the Lawrence Loop is, has been such a challenge. But it seems to me that if that actually gets done, it really adds to the political will of the community. I mean, more people will ride it. People from out of the city will come to ride it. It would just bring more attention to the whole thing, and I think it builds the political resources needed in order to really emphasize bike stuff.
And it is part of when we say, we call it the priority and secondary funding networks, but the loop is the biggest part of the priority network. So I think we're talking about the same thing in terms of prioritizing those things. We just think about them as a larger network more than just the loop infrastructure. So there's the the other connecting pieces of how people can access that without having to have a personal car to get there if they don't live right adjacent to it or along it. So. Any other conversation about? So if you have not, I know some of you may have attended some of our events before. In our Lawrence Bike planning process, we will be following the public participation plan that the Lawrence Douglas MPO has. It is aligned with the International Association of Public Participation Tools and Guidebooks, which looks at engagement, public engagement. When we do work with the MPO, we consider this type of work when we're working with a steering committee at the collaborate level of engagement. Oftentimes, the public then is afforded the opportunity really more at an involved level of engagement because we're soliciting from them and then we're bringing that to you to help us guide and make decisions about what ends up in that plan. And so that we give you that information to kind of set the expectation for how we plan to do engagement. So I'll let you change that. Everything that we hear from the public, we will, if you've ever seen any of our plans or documents before, you'll know that we are very transparent about how we do that work, and we will document comments we receive, survey results, and we will provide those to you as they are. And we also may sort them by theme or topic to help you be able to process them as we work through them and talk about them together, but just know to expect that from our process and the work that we do at the MPO. We know that as we do that, we're increasing the impact on the decision, and we don't have a vested interest in where we end up in this work, in the sense that our directive is we're doing a process, and the goal is our bigger common community goals around that our strategic plan and our long range plan have about increasing bikeability and safety and mobility and all of those things around equity and our commitment to engagement. So I say that so you know what to expect from us, and feel okay if you're not feeling like you're receiving that, to please let us know, because that's our intention.
I'm sorry I'm talking so much, but I'm familiar with the IP too. And I remember one time I was in London, and in the library there, they had brochures for each of the services that they provided. And it said, we promise, the British, we promise to do the following. But what really stood out for me is, in order for us to do this, this is what we need from you. And I think for any public engagement, there's those two pieces. And that what we need from you in order to get this done is a really important one that's overlooked a lot.
And I think part of the thing about engagement too, in some of those tools, is there is a space where people can share their experiences or their insight and perspective. And there are ways that we can bring that back and be able to use that and tell people how we made decisions. And we also try to do that also, because I think that's closing that feedback loop to be able to show some of that process. Okay, so we plan to do that. Really, we have this steering committee. We plan at this point, what we're looking at is really kind of 2 open houses, but we're going in planning for our first open house and thinking about what that means in terms of being able to share with the community where we've been and what work we've done, and really hearing from them. Probably we are planning to use a visual preference survey that we used a previous time we did this planning work, to look at different facility types and comfort levels and understand how people are using, exist, and feel about recently implemented bikeways in the community, as a way to kind of assess where we fall on that, in addition to best practices. So there will be a survey component, there will be boards and information sharing. That's kind of 2-way information at an open house. Then we know there are going to be some topics like our conversation about bike parking at city facilities, or, in city-owned spaces, where we're going to need to maybe do some focus group work. Maybe that's downtown businesses, people who bike downtown. That's people who use those specific facilities, so we can better understand their needs, where we won't necessarily hear some of that engagement in a larger public process. That for focus groups, I think that is going to mean other things in terms of thinking about how we engage with some of those plus users who may not see just bike plan survey and understanding all the sides of the user types to see who's in those spaces. It may also be youth. It may be at the universities needing to do specific engagement. In whatever other spaces that we need to have conversations, and we will also do some of that. Then we also do additional tabling, which maybe this is where maybe people have seen us the most at public events and spaces, oftentimes farmers market, in the lobby of the library. We've been to Boys and Girls Club, we've been to Housing Authority, we've been
We
to,
went to Summerfest last year.
yeah, we went to Rotary clubs. We'll do some of that sort of stuff so we can try to reach a broader, diverse audience for some of our topics and things. But we'll build that process. And when we have opportunities, of course, you're welcome to attend and see what, help us staff things. If you're interested in doing some of that, we're helping us staff any tables or having those discussions. I think those are always valuable experiences for committee members, steering committee members to have with us, especially if you haven't done some of that work before. And we will hear things on all ends of the spectrum. And so that's all, that I think is a really valuable process, and we'll provide opportunities when we build the schedule for you to participate with us in those spaces if you choose to do so. But also know, even if you choose not to, we will be bringing the documentation of that work back to you as a tool to help guide us.
I think kind of building on your point as well, when we send out that information, we'll send that to the whole committee, but when the surveys go live, tell your friends, help get the word out. Not everyone follows the city channels and things, so we appreciate your help spreading the word on both surveys, open houses, coming and participating in those, things like that as well.
Yes. So I've thrown a lot of information at you. Does anybody want to have a conversation about anything we've talked about up to this point? Otherwise, we're going to talk a little bit about what our next steps are going to be and where we're going to be at back with what we're kind of looking at for our work at an open house and how we plan to bring that back to you. Is there any conversation anybody would like to have before we get to that point?
Public engagement also include the libraries at the college campus.
Sure, we can certainly table that, and I think that's another kind of opportunity that, again, we'd love to hear from you. If there are, I know, I believe it was Pat mentioned, that you lead the Monday night ride. If there are, spaces or populations that you would like us to come and talk to, either, to formally promote the survey or the open houses coming up, or just to kind of have us out and hear feedback. I will say, if you invite me to a bike ride, I'll be super excited to come in and participate in that. But meetings, facilities at your universities, places like that, we're happy to reach out to provide information. We can do small presentations, like Jessica mentioned, we've gone to Rotary clubs in the past, civic organizations like that. So yes, absolutely. If there's a space that you would like to see us in, let us know, and we'll see how we can fit that into our workload and plan.
Students don't leave the campus, right? You only have one bus that leaves the campus, and people do have cars, but anyone that doesn't have a car usually isn't going anywhere. So,
and we love to find events that people are already at to go just put our table at and listen to, what I mean, to what people have to say, whether that's taking a formal survey or talking to us about the process. I think there's a lot of education learning that can happen in those spaces. So we are planning to begin to kick off our public call for engagement with the community after spring break, kind of that last week in March. We'll have as part of that online survey. We'll have an open house. And we have an internal staff team we're gathering members to do internal coordination with internal departments, probably a longstanding committee, and then some specific focus topic areas, like we may engage with the parking manager to talk about bike parking downtown, or we may, with any topic specific stuff with staff as we coordinate that. And so we'll be doing that in the interim. And then we're looking at kind of between all of that, I think Stephen's thinking about a bike ride as part of our engagement, thinking of like, instead of a walk audit, a bike audit, some sort of experience ride that we can do as part of our open engagement process. And then we'll be doing a bunch of tabling in the interim time with a plan to finish that and be able to compile that work to bring back to you with some of those high level barriers for people and issues and some of that preference survey for facility type and comfort at a May meeting. That's what we have prepared for you this evening to talk about. I'd be happy to entertain any questions you might have about process or anything about the work that we're embarking on.
How well do you feel like you're reaching people who aren't biking for various reasons? Like, so I think Lawrence is pretty bikeable around the perimeter of the city, but if you have to get over KU or Iowa or over 6th Street or over 23rd, I think, so we own a bike shop and one of the questions I get is like, what's a route for me to get across one of those barriers? How well do you feel like you're reaching people who aren't biking because of barriers? I think it's easy to reach the people who are riding the loop or in a bike club or already comfortable. But I think there's a whole population of people who are not quite comfortable, but would be if there was some obstacle removed.
Yeah, and so I think part of our engagement strategy around whoever's gonna come to the open house, it's people who either love bikes or hate bikes. And who's gonna take our survey when we just send out a link? It's people who either love bikes or hate bikes. And then we see that. It's people on each end of the spectrum. Build nothing, you belong on the sidewalk, build stuff comfortable for everybody to use. I mean, we're gonna hear all of these perspectives. That's just an example. And I think you're right that there is a lot of people in this middle space. And the work we have to do to be available in spaces where people already are to try to engage with people is the valuable work that we're gonna have to try to do. And so how well we will do will depend on how much time we invest in that, quite honestly, and how much maybe you all can help us identify locations where we need to be for those types of conversations. The library is going to be a really good space for us because there are all sorts of members of our community that participate at the library, and we talk to a lot of people. When you're at the library, you have an extra 5 or 10 minutes to talk to somebody about an issue you may feel mediocre about. Rotary Club or, Boys and Girls Club or any of these other types of spaces, even farmers market, it's gonna get a different realm of people. And so when we build that list of locations that we're tabling, we will share that with you. And if you see something like you think of other ideas for us, we will accept them. We know though, however, like people go table at the grocery store. No, that's a waste of our time. When people are at the grocery store, they want to get groceries and they want to get out. But if we can go to spaces where people are already, like events or festivals or things where people are, that will help us the most be able to get a really diverse representation of people. And the reality of some of our work in the conversation is, I was gonna go look at we have done a long range planning process 2 plans ago where we got 1,000 responses, right? Or I've seen public health do that, but we're gonna be in the hundreds. And we will work as hard as we can to get as many diverse responses as we can in that process. Because I do think that when we ask people some of those questions about how often you bike and do some of that, there will be good indication in there about what type of cyclist do you identify with, or rider do you identify with, and some of those sorts of things help us understand for people who don't ride or are not as comfortable, what types of things they consider comfortable versus, I imagine Catherine or Jared, who you bike a lot of places, you know where you're gonna bike and you feel comfortable doing that in more places than probably most people.
I will suggest places that you could probably table.
Yes.
Okay, the Tammany Library at high school is where a lot of students go, and in fact, they frequently have people presentations in the library, they're set up for it. That's seminar or something like that where people can join. It's very effective if you have food. So I guess most people will show up actually if you offer food. So it's so that happens a lot with high school students because we only have one way to kind of get food on campus. So pre-giving with food is very effective. So
I think just, you know, from some of the experience that we've had at these tabling events, they are really great interactions. We do catch these kind of peripheral riders, people. You know, I've had some great conversations with people about, I would love to commute, but I'm worried about this one section. We can talk about that. And so, yeah, I think that those face-to-face interactions are an opportunity. It's just how we balance those with the rest of the work.
And I think we can do things like when we're tabling, we'll have rideability maps with us and we'll have that out. People will take those, we'll talk to them about infrastructure or new facilities. There's lots of those types of informal conversations that happen as part of that work.
Ways for people who don't speak English to weigh in.
We have a limited English proficiency plan and we have an approach that we use an I speak sheet. Our work is federally funded. It's a requirement of the work that we do. And so we have some phone line translation available to us if we need to embark on that. We have, in my 15 years, even when we've done outreach to English as a second language populations or in front of cultural grocery stores where we'd expect non-English speakers, and when we had interns that spoke other languages, we still have had a really hard time getting any engagement from non-English speaking. And even with our English as a second language, they wanted to participate with us in English. But we have, and we don't do automatic translation of stuff, but if it's requested for our surveys or other things, we will do phone line conversations, and we have a service, a language translation service if we need to translate 4 documents to do our work. Fine, I was just writing something and I'm.
Yeah, so from the, so I voted for the coordination piece, right? But I see coordination almost less as an, maybe coordination with, but more like kind of takes 2 to tango, maybe as an opportunity to advance certain priorities, biking or bike related safety priorities in other policy areas. So for instance, it could be do with policies for street configuration. So I'm wondering how much you see the bikes plan as a vehicle, if you will, to influence or call for changes in other City of Lawrence transit policies.
Sure, so I think there's space for that. And I think part of it depends on where we have identified specific things. So I think that oftentimes in planning process, if it's just something very generic like update this code to make it more friendly. It sits there because it doesn't have any activity. But I would say we've been very successful when we've made other recommendations, like update the complete streets policy checklist and add this thing. Do you know what I mean? And so I would encourage you to not limit yourself as we start talking about strategies and as we explore things to do, that we can make those recommendations in that space. The thing I think we'll need to be very thoughtful about is figuring out how we can do that in a way that's specific enough that it drives a specific type of action, as opposed to just like, make this more friendly. Because I think oftentimes if it's too just make this more friendly, then it's like, it already is friendly. It's not unfriendly, you know, it's not, it hasn't taken us to the next step. But I would say it's gonna be context specific. And so, you know, we're writing a citywide plan. We are embarking on this journey together. We are also gonna be liaisoning as facilitators with internal staff. And there are some limitations, like fire code has the ability to veto all traffic calming. So there are gonna be things like that in other provisions of stuff. We don't control that, right? We can make a recommendation about that, but the ownership of that is gonna live in another work group to decide and eventually, you know, the city commission to direct some of that action. And so in some of those spaces, as far as implementation goes, we get in a space where we have to get buy-in and process involvement earlier to figure out what are the negotiables and non-negotiables. And that's some of our role as staff to try to help figure out, so we don't get to the end making a recommendation that we know is gonna land flat. And we will try to, in the process, navigate some of that to try to figure out where those buttons are.
Okay.
Does that help?
That does, thank you.
The East Lawrence Yard Sale is March 29th. From 8 to 5. It would be a great
Okay,
place.
yes.
There'll be 300
Yes,
people
yeah.
there. There's a place to go.
Unfortunately, the timing will be right. Sometimes people have events and we're like, we're not ready yet.
Yeah,
But
well,
the time, yeah,
last week in March.
Yeah.
It's the last Saturday.
I don't have anything else for you. So at this point.
Will we participate in the open house in the spring?
Yeah, we will make sure you have an invitation to come and participate if you want to have conversations with people. If you want us to make you name badges to identify you as steering committee members, we can do that. You can just come and participate as a member of the public to see how that process looks and go. You can help us staff that if you want. You can help us by getting other people to come and attend and participate in our conversations. It's kind of up to you and the level of engagement that you want to have in that.
Is there a tentative date for it yet?
We have not set a tentative date for the open house. It will be, we very often will unveil a survey with the open house. It will probably be a little, not quite line up that way for this one. So yeah, probably late March, early April.
Oftentimes that's dictated by when we can get meeting spaces.
Mhm.
I'll just send any of the charts that were. Let's do like committee members, so we can have a reference.
Yeah, so this project does have a web page on the community engagement page on the City of Lawrence. It's the Lawrence Bikes Plan update. Got a little tile of people using the bike box at 15th and Mass. And if you click on that, it'll have updates throughout as far as upcoming meetings, past meetings. We will upload a recording of this meeting as well as the slides. And I will typically email the whole committee and let you know when I make those update changes. I can send attachments to people if they like and want copies themselves. Normally I just put them online so that everybody has access whenever they see it.
And this is an open, this is an open meeting in the sense that the information, we're not providing you special information. It's information we're posting publicly at that space that anybody can review it and provide us written comment or your names are online, so.
Good. In one of the documents that we're on the agenda, there's a rideability map and there's a link to it. And when I click on that link, I need to sign in.
That's
And
a problem on our end. We can fix that.
Can you? Okay.
Yes.
Great, because it's the ArcGIS
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
yes, the choice of
Somebody
Lawrence.
didn't make that public and it should be. We can fix that.
Okay,
Okay, that's on us. Let us know stuff like that though, because
Did you get the subscription page?
it just went to, the subscription page, and I put my name on it and I applied. I didn't hear anything back.
No, it just saves and you'll be on
Yeah.
those lists.
Okay.
Oh,
did it for me too. Wants me to sign in.
Okay,
So we have a
Good, I'm not-
publishing issue. It's not you.
yeah.
We have a publishing issue. Oh, publishing. Oh, okay.
Oh yeah, she baked. That's so good.
And please, as we're doing this work, reach out to us if there's other conversation you want to have about anything or understand. Thank you for your time. And we'll be in touch soon about all of our engagement opportunities.
joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.